Hello. Welcome back to another Bible story children's time. Here we are on Monday, August 31st. Hard to believe September is just around the corner. But welcome back to Bible story children's time. As we get started today, I just wanted to give you a little mention here about how we're going to do things, at least for a little bit. In order to try to visit more different stories and different things in the Bible, I decided we're going to kind of break Bible story children's time up into 3 different segments. On Mondays, it's going to be Old Testament Monday. We'll be looking at stories from the Old Testament. Tuesday will be New Testament Tuesday. We'll look at stories from Gospels and from the epistles, and we'll be talking a little bit about what the difference is. And then Wednesdays are going to be Wild Card Wednesdays. If you have suggestions, if you have questions about the Bible, about what you read in the Bible and how to look at things maybe, or what different things mean, we'll get to those on Wild Card Wednesday. If there aren't any suggestions coming in, I will try to address some things that I think might be of interest. So that's what we're planning on doing. So we'll be here Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday every week. And I hope that will work out for you. And we'll try to keep it interesting as we do. So this week, this Monday, it's Old Testament Monday. So we're going to talk about the very beginning of the Old Testament. That is the book of Genesis. Genesis is an interesting book because it's broken up into different segments, of course, telling different stories. But the story we're going to talk about today, we talked about Joseph and Abraham and those folks. Those are all in Genesis. We're going to talk about stuff that happened even earlier today. And we're in a section of the book that scholars look at, and they look at the language, they look at the vocabulary used, and they look at the whole structure of what's written. And they identify Genesis, at least the early parts of Genesis, as a literary work. Which is not to say that it's taking away from the history of it by any means. But what they do say is it's not written as a history, the way we think of history. It's not written as a biography, the way we think of biographies. It's written, really, the earliest parts of Genesis are written as an explanation of why things are the way they are. And that's important to understand as we start reading. We're not reading a science text. We're not reading a history. We are reading God's inspiration to man. Because this is, as we call it, it's inspired word of God. It is somebody that took the origin stories that had been passed down over hundreds or thousands of years, and taking those and writing them down. And in the case of Genesis, as happens periodically with the really old books in the Bible, these are things that were written down a couple of times in a couple of different sources. And what happened relatively late in the development of the book of Genesis, probably in the 600-700s BC, is some editor or editors decided to take the different stories from the different texts and try to put them into one book and kind of mold and shape them together into one thing. But sometimes they slip up, and you can see the same story repeated in a slightly different way within the same chapter. And if we run across those, I'll try to think to point them out to you. So, like I said, we're going to start in Genesis. We are going to start way at the beginning, Genesis 1:1. And I'm going to start by reading through it, and then we'll stop, and we'll think a little bit about what we were reading. I wish we could get, Morgan Freeman to read this, or Safe Driver, Save 40% guy, but we're stuck with me, so bear with me. And this is from the NIV, the New International Version. Genesis 1, chapter 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. Now, what did we just hear? Every time I have read this or heard it since I was a kid, I have thought we were hearing the story about how God kind of sculpted the very foundation of the universe out of formlessness. How God took, part of it and he made it light. He took the other part and he called it dark. And that's what he did. This is like the very, very earliest moments of creation. And that is kind of what we're hearing. But as I've been studying this, I've learned a little bit more about what, or how I should say, the Hebrew people of the time, 3,000 years ago or more, how they would have interpreted what we're reading. And for that, we need to know that the word create doesn't mean exactly the same thing to us as it did to them. And you're thinking, that doesn't make any sense. You create something, you make it. It's you had nothing and then you have something. You created it. But to the Hebrew people and to the Middle Eastern people in general, they think of creation, they think of existence, they think of something being, basically, in a different way from us. If we think of creating something, if we think of something that something's been created, it is either a physical object, it's molecules, it's atoms, it's something bound together, or it's experiential. We have experienced love, we've experienced sadness, we've experienced, whatever you want to call it. And that's created as well. Ancient Hebrews and the Middle Eastern folks, to them an object being created, the existence of an object, means that it had a purpose. So until something, this is the way they looked at it, their culture, until something had a purpose, until something served some need or some purpose in the world, it really wasn't anything. That's one thing to know. The other thing to know is when Genesis says, now the earth was formless and empty, the word formless, the word that gets translated as formless, the Hebrew word is tohu. That does mean formless, but it also means chaotic. And it means purposeless. So here we're getting back to the earth, the universe as it existed at that time, had no purpose. Darkness was over the surface of the deep. And the deep is waters. And water is a metaphor, again, for chaos. And it was darkness over the chaos. So it was not only formless, it was invisible. And then the Spirit of God hovered over the waters. The Hebrew word for spirit is ruach. And it not only means spirit, it means breath, it means wind. And that's going to be important because we hear that time and time again throughout not just the Old Testament, but into the New Testament as well. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. So this Spirit of God, the breath of God, hovered over the formlessness. And then God said, let there be light. And there was light. The Hebrew word for that is or, O-R. Go figure. And God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. He separated light from chaos. And he called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the Hebrew word for darkness is chosek. And that means obscurity. It means hidden. It means, everything opposite of being in the light. And there was evening, and there was morning, and there was the first day. And for us, again, 2,000-3,000 years later, closer to 3, after this is written, we think of it in very concrete terms, very, very much like a calendar. Oh, a day. There's a day, there's a night. That's day. That's a day, calendar day. But when you dig into what was happening, God was actually creating time. Because prior to this, there was this cloud of obscurity and formlessness and no order at all. And then God takes light and he takes day. And the passage between the two is created by God. And that is the first day. So not only does God create order out of chaos, not only does he create light and separate it out from the chaos and the darkness and the obscurity, but he creates time as well. And that's kind of, like mind-blowing to me. And then God goes and he says, let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water. So God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above it. And it was so. God called the vault sky, and there was evening, and there was morning, and it was the second day. What does that mean? Remember this idea of water being representing chaos and disorder and all these undesirable things? what God did by creating this vault, which is really like a dome in the sky, God separated the land, separated the world from the outer darkness, the chaos. God created the dome and he said, all right, the chaos is not going to enter into my domain here on earth. And I'll protect it from that. And what God did was he imposed protection and order upon the earth and separated it from the disorder that was the rest of whatever was out there. And again, this is a very Middle Eastern way of looking at things. But it was critical, because what God was doing step by step is he was scooping out this world that he was creating for us. He was protecting it with order. What we would think of today, if we were writing this in like scientific terms, God created laws. He created physical laws. He said, all right, in my universe here that I'm creating, things are going to work this way. We're not letting the chaos in so that up can mean down and right can mean left and inside out can be the same as outside in. No, none of that stuff. We are creating order here, and to do that, we are going to have laws that say everything happens in a particular way. And that's what God did at the earliest times. And we're about out of time. But you get a sense for what this book of creation really means, I think. I encourage you to go back and look at Genesis 1, how it starts, and think of it from the terms of somebody, 3,000 years ago with a totally different understanding of the cosmos than we have. And you can appreciate the importance of what was going on. God was literally creating our world. And not only that, he was creating a structure of physical laws around that world to make sure that it would operate in a non-chaotic, orderly way. Because that's the only way we could exist. And we would exist. That was in the plan. We'll talk more about that next time. But tomorrow, we're going to be on New Testament. And remember, Wednesday, if you have suggestions for something you'd like to hear about, or just a question you've got, please send them to me. My email address is in the comments. It's pastorkhewitt@gmail.com. And I will do my best to answer them. In the meantime, have a great afternoon, rest of the afternoon. Great evening, and stay safe.